She walked into the wrong building, spilled coffee on her resume, and somehow ended up landing the job of a lifetime, and maybe even the love of her life. Sometimes the best mistakes aren't mistakes at all. Before we dive into this unforgettable story of accidental meetings and unexpected love, drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. If feel-good stories with a twist are your thing, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We've got another heartwarming adventure coming your way tomorrow, and trust us, you won't want to miss it. Emma Johnson wasn't exactly having a perfect day. At 24, she had just moved to San Francisco, hoping to start fresh, but everything seemed to be going wrong. Her heel was bent, her hair was frizzing from the humidity, and the resume she clutched in her hands had an unmistakable coffee stain right down the middle. But Emma wasn't one to let small setbacks get in her way. She had one goal: land an interview. Today would be the day. Her appointment was at TechGen, a thriving tech company known for its innovation and high-powered clients. After a long walk, she finally arrived, feeling out of place in front of the sleek, modern building. "This is the place," she muttered to herself, staring up at the shiny glass structure. The receptionist, looking bored, handed her a visitor's badge without a word. Emma managed a nervous smile, muttering her name, and she was led to the elevator. The doors opened to reveal a floor full of sharp-dressed professionals rushing through their work, and Emma felt like a fish out of water. Her blazer made awkward squeaky sounds as she walked, but she kept her head high. She was determined, this was her chance. As the assistant guided her to a glass-walled conference room, she thought to herself, maybe this isn't such a disaster after all. Emma sat nervously in the glass-walled conference room, trying her best not to fidget. The sounds of clacking keyboards and hushed conversations filled the air, making her feel even more out of place. She was sure she had walked into the wrong interview. It wasn't supposed to be like this. This was no small coffee shop job. It was TechGen, a leading company in the tech world, and she was applying for a position that she wasn't even sure she could handle. She straightened her blazer, awkwardly shifting in her chair when the door suddenly swung open. In walked Alex Parker, the CEO of TechGen, tall and commanding, dressed in an impeccably tailored suit. He didn't even look up from his tablet as he walked past her, taking a seat on the other side of the table. "Emma Johnson, huh? You're here for the secretary position?" Alex asked, raising an eyebrow. Emma's heart skipped a beat. Secretary? That wasn't the job she had applied for. She quickly glanced at the resume she had clutched in her hand, seeing nothing but an assortment of mistakes and irrelevant skills that weren't going to get her the job. Well, yes, but I thought this was for a position at the cafe downstairs," she stammered, clearly embarrassed. Alex looked at her with a smirk, obviously amused by the whole situation. "Look, you've got the wrong building," he said, still scanning his tablet. TechGen is a global tech company. That job you're looking for is at the coffee shop downstairs. This isn't where you need to be. Emma's stomach dropped. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. She had walked into a high-end tech company, expecting a low-wage barista job, and now, she was face to face with a CEO who was kindly telling her that she wasn't even in the right place. But Alex wasn't done. "Tell you what," he said, still studying his screen. "You've got guts, I'll give you that. But I need someone who can handle a little more than a coffee machine." Emma blinked, completely taken aback. "What are you saying? I'm offering you a job. Starting tomorrow. Personal assistant. You seem like you can handle it." Alex's words hung in the air for a long moment before he finally looked up, studying her closely. "That's if you think you can keep up with the chaos." Emma's jaw dropped. "Are you serious?" "Very serious," Alex replied, his eyes showing a hint of amusement. "Start at 8 a.m. tomorrow. Office next to mine. You'll have plenty of paper and coffee, so get yourself ready." Emma sat there for a moment, unsure if this was some kind of prank. But Alex stood up, walking toward the door without another word. "Wait," she called out, still processing everything. "Do you want my resume or?" "No need for that," he called back over his shoulder. Just bring yourself. And try not to embarrass me on your first day. Oh, and don't call me, sir. It's Alex. The door clicked shut behind him, leaving Emma stunned and completely unsure of what had just happened. She sat in the conference room for a few moments, holding her breath, as if expecting someone to jump out and shout, "Gotcha." But no one did. Was this real? Had she really just been hired by mistake? Her heart raced as she slowly stood up, adjusting the badge around her neck. I walked into the wrong building and got a job. Maybe I'm just lucky. The next morning, Emma arrived at TechGen's sleek headquarters, the same building she had mistakenly walked into the day before. She stood at the entrance for a moment, her heart racing. This time, she was dressed in her best formal attire, which was really just the least wrinkled blouse she owned and a pair of pants she could zip without holding her breath. The morning air was cool, but the nerves in her stomach made it feel like a sauna. First day on the job, she muttered to herself, walking past the receptionist, who gave her a half-hearted stare as she made her way to the elevator. Emma had barely stepped inside when the elevator doors closed behind her, and she quickly glanced at her reflection in the mirrored walls. What am I even doing here? She glanced at the badge clipped to her blouse. It read, Emma Johnson, Personal Assistant. She couldn't help but laugh nervously. Personal assistant. Right. I was hired to be someone's assistant, but this isn't exactly the job I expected. When the elevator doors opened on the 17th floor, she stepped out into a maze of cubicles and sleek, modern offices. She had no idea where to go, but before she could panic, a woman in a perfectly tailored blazer appeared, clipboard in hand. You must be Emma, the woman said, barely looking up from her tablet. I'm Amanda. Executive assistant to Alex Parker. Let me show you your desk. Yeah. That's me. The personal assistant, Emma replied, trying to sound confident but failing miserably. Amanda didn't seem to notice. She just led Emma down the corridor, each step echoing off the polished floors. They arrived at a large desk with a computer, a phone, a notepad, and a white mug that read, "Keep calm and schedule it." Emma sat down awkwardly, and Amanda gave her a brief rundown of her duties. You'll answer calls, organize meetings, keep Alex on time, and make sure he doesn't forget anything, Amanda said, almost robotically. Oh, and make sure you don't mess things up. Alex doesn't like mistakes. Yeah, that sounds easy, Emma said with a nervous chuckle, though she had no idea how she was supposed to juggle everything at once. Amanda turned to leave, and Emma was left alone in the sterile office. The silence was overwhelming. I can do this. I just have to pretend like I know what I'm doing, she thought. But that plan quickly fell apart as soon as she tried to log into the company system. She clicked the wrong buttons, restarted her computer by mistake, and ended up calling HR, thinking she was reaching housekeeping. She sighed and placed her head in her hands. This is a disaster. But just when Emma thought things couldn't get worse, the printer made a strange noise. She leaned in, inspecting it like it might start spitting out gold, but all it did was beep at her, almost as if mocking her. Nathan Parker, the CEO, appeared at her desk just then. He raised an eyebrow at her and glanced at the printer. Still no fires, I hope, he asked, leaning against her desk with a knowing smirk. No fires yet, Emma replied with a nervous laugh. But the printer gave me a look. I think it's planning something. Nathan chuckled, clearly entertained by her chaotic energy. Well, keep it up. You've got more character than the last 3 people we hired. Maybe you'll survive. Emma blinked, not entirely sure if that was a compliment or not, but she decided to take it as one. She had survived her first morning, after all, without setting anything on fire, or at least not permanently. As the days passed, Emma started to get into a strange rhythm at TechGen. Her mornings were filled with disaster after disaster, misplacing meeting times, confusing important calls, and even organizing files in a way that no one, including herself, could ever understand. But what was unexpected was that Alex seemed to take it all in stride. He didn't fire her. In fact, he started leaving little notes on her desk, gently reminding her of things she'd forgotten, always with a note of encouragement buried in the mess of tasks. One afternoon, after Emma had mistakenly called the wrong person for a meeting and scrambled to reschedule it, Alex walked into the office, his usual serious demeanor softened by a rare grin. "You know, you're the only person who could turn a simple scheduling error into a comedy routine," Alex said, leaning casually against her desk. "How do you manage that?" Emma paused mid-typing, surprised by the compliment. "I guess it's my special skill. I'm a pro at turning chaos into charm." Alex studied her for a moment, his arms crossed. "You're definitely something. I've worked with dozens of assistants, but none of them had your energy. I think I might actually miss you if you leave." Emma chuckled, not sure if he was being serious. "Are you trying to say you'd miss my mess?" He smiled for a fraction of a second before going back to his usual stoic expression. "Not the mess, no. But definitely your unorthodox approach." Something about the way Alex said it made Emma stop and reconsider everything. This job, which she had initially thought was just a temporary blip in her search for the right career, was starting to feel oddly significant. She had spent most of her life trying to fit into molds that didn't quite suit her. Every job interview had been an attempt to convince others she was someone she wasn't. But here, with Alex, she wasn't trying to fit into anything. She was just being herself, flaws, quirks, and all, and he seemed to appreciate it. The realization hit her hard one evening, when Alex unexpectedly pulled her into a meeting with the marketing team. She had no idea what she was doing there, but when Alex introduced her as the one who's been keeping everything together in her own unique way, she felt a strange sense of pride. Maybe she wasn't just the disaster waiting to happen, maybe she was the chaos that held it all together. Later that night, Emma found herself in the office late, scrolling through her phone when Alex appeared in the doorway. "Working late?" he asked, leaning casually against the doorframe. "Just catching up," she replied with a half-smile. "You know, making sure the chaos is organized." He grinned, stepping into the room. "Well, I need you to be well-rested for tomorrow. There's a big presentation, and I can't afford for my chaotic genius to fall asleep during it." Emma laughed, but something shifted in her. The usual butterflies in her stomach when Alex entered the room now had a new meaning. She was starting to realize that she was more than just a quirky assistant to him. He was starting to see her differently too. For the first time, Emma didn't feel out of place. She was no longer the girl trying to figure out where she belonged in a corporate world she didn't understand. Instead, she was beginning to realize that maybe, just maybe, she was exactly where she was meant to be. And the best part? She wasn't pretending to be anything other than who she truly was. The next morning at TechGen started off like any other, Emma spilling her coffee while juggling 2 folders and Alex pretending not to notice her mild disasters. But right after lunch, everything took a sharp, unexpected turn. Alex called her into his office, his expression unusually serious. Emma braced herself, half expecting to be fired for accidentally sending an internal memo to the entire marketing team that morning, complete with a gif of a cat clumsily falling off a table. Instead, Alex set his tablet aside and leaned forward. "I need to ask you something. A little unconventional." Emma blinked. "Unconventional like, help me fix the printer or help me survive a board meeting?" He cracked a small, reluctant smile. "More unconventional than that. My grandmother, Margaret Parker, has decided it's time I settle down. She's already arranged a few matchmaking setups. And she's not the type to take no for an answer." Emma crossed her arms, intrigued. "And where exactly do I come in?" Alex looked almost sheepish, a rare sight. "I need you to pretend to be my girlfriend. Just for a little while. Dinners, family events, photos. Nothing extreme. Just enough to convince my grandmother that I'm serious about someone." Emma stared at him for a long second. Was this real life? First, she accidentally got hired, and now she was being recruited to be the CEO's fake girlfriend. San Francisco is wild, she thought. She leaned back in her chair, pretending to mull it over. So let me get this straight. You want me, Emma Johnson, certified chaos magnet, to be your polished, picture-perfect fake girlfriend? Alex nodded, a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. Exactly. And what's in it for me? She asked, raising an eyebrow. A bonus, he said immediately. Flexible hours. And if anyone at work finds out, I'll make sure it doesn't affect your job. Emma tapped her chin dramatically. Do I get hazard pay if I trip over your grandmother's antique rug? He actually laughed, a real, genuine laugh that made Emma's heart jump a little. Deal, she said finally, reaching out her hand. But I have a few conditions. Alex raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. First, she said, ticking them off on her fingers, no surprise early morning brunches. I'm not functional before 9 a.m. Second, if anyone asks how we fell in love, you have to say it was because of my superior note-taking skills. And third, if this ever feels like too much, we both agree to walk away with no hard feelings. Alex nodded seriously and shook her hand. Agreed. As Emma left his office, she couldn't help but smile. It was absurd. It was reckless. It was the kind of thing that only happened in movies. But somehow, deep down, she had a feeling that this crazy arrangement was about to change everything, and somewhere in the back of Alex's mind, he knew it too. He watched her walk out of his office, a little more light and laughter following her wherever she went, and for the first time in a long time, he wondered if letting someone into his perfectly controlled life might not be the disaster he had always feared, but maybe exactly what he needed. Emma dove headfirst into her new role as Alex's fake girlfriend with her usual blend of nervous energy and bold enthusiasm. At first, it was all about smiling through dinners, memorizing obscure family details, and trying not to trip over her own heels at formal events. But slowly, things began to shift, quietly, almost imperceptibly. At one charity gala, as they posed for photos, Alex surprised her by casually slipping his hand into hers. It wasn't scripted. It wasn't even necessary. Yet somehow, the gesture felt natural. His hand was steady, sure, while hers had to stop itself from trembling. Later that night, when they reviewed the day's chaos over takeout in Alex's sleek penthouse, Emma caught him smiling, genuinely smiling, over her story about accidentally thanking a senator for the delicious lasagna, instead of complimenting his policy speech. You're the only person who could survive tonight without making a single enemy, Alex said, handing her a fortune cookie. That's because no one can get mad at a walking disaster, she quipped, cracking it open. The fortune inside read, surprises are the best parts of life. She snorted. Fitting. As days blurred into weeks, Emma's organized chaos somehow found a rhythm inside Alex's meticulously scheduled life. She started picking up on his habits, the way he tightened his tie when stressed, how he drummed his fingers on his desk when deep in thought. Without even realizing it, she left small pieces of herself behind, sticky notes with ridiculous reminders, random playlists cued on the office speakers, chocolate bars tucked into his desk drawer for emergency morale boosts. Alex, in return, let down walls Emma suspected he didn't even know he had built. He listened to her ramble about her dreams of starting a non-profit one day. He started laughing more easily. He even let her organize his chaotic sock drawer into what she called zones of happiness, though he insisted he didn't see the point. One evening, after a long day of meetings and a company event, they found themselves sitting side by side on the rooftop of Alex's building. The San Francisco skyline glittered around them, and for once, Emma didn't feel out of place among all that shine. You know, Alex said, glancing over at her, you've changed things around here. Emma hugged her knees to her chest. In a good way or a catastrophic way? A good way, he said, his voice quieter than usual. The kind of way that makes you wonder how you ever lived without it. For a moment, Emma didn't know what to say. A soft breeze tugged at her hair, and the city lights blinked far below them. She could have laughed it off. Made another joke about chaos and coffee stains. But instead, she just smiled at him, a real, raw smile. And Alex smiled back. It wasn't pretend anymore. Not for either of them. What started as a ridiculous agreement to fool a grandmother had become something far more complicated and infinitely more real. Emma didn't just fit into Alex's world, she made it brighter, livelier, more human. And Alex didn't just tolerate Emma's chaos anymore. He needed it. The night everything changed wasn't grand or dramatic. There were no fireworks or violin soundtracks in the background. Instead, it was simple, a quiet Tuesday evening after a long day, the kind where exhaustion made everything feel just a little more honest. Emma was curled up on the couch in Alex's penthouse, her laptop balancing precariously on one knee while she typed out a to-do list for the next week. Alex was in the kitchen, pouring 2 glasses of wine, unusually silent. She didn't think much of it, he was always serious after work. But when he walked over and set the glass in front of her, she noticed something different in his expression. Something softer. He sat beside her, stretching his long legs out and leaning back, wine glass untouched in his hand. For a few minutes, neither of them said anything. The soft hum of city noise filled the space between them. Finally, Alex cleared his throat, still not looking at her. "Emma, do you ever wonder if we're still pretending?" Emma smiled to herself, closing her laptop. She set it on the coffee table and turned to face him fully. "I stopped pretending a while ago." Alex exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. His eyes finally met hers, steady, open, vulnerable in a way she'd never seen before. "Me too," he said, voice low. They sat there, the unspoken truth hovering between them, fragile but undeniable. Emma's heart pounded. She had dreamed about this moment, feared it, hoped for it. She had built up every defense imaginable to protect herself, and yet here she was, ready to let it all fall away. "Then what do we do about it?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Alex set his glass down and shifted closer, so close she could feel the heat radiating off him. He reached out, carefully brushing a strand of hair away from her face. His touch was feather-light, but it sent a jolt through her whole body. "I think," he said slowly, "we stop being afraid of it." Before Emma could overthink, before she could let her nerves get the best of her, Alex leaned in and kissed her. It wasn't a hesitant kiss. It was full and sure, like he'd been waiting for this, like it was the only thing that ever made sense. Emma melted into it, her hands finding the front of his shirt as if they had a mind of their own. All the months of fake smiles, scripted laughs, and pretend glances faded into something real, something fierce and bright. When they finally pulled apart, Emma rested her forehead against his, laughing softly. "So, does this mean your grandmother wins?" she teased. Alex chuckled, pulling her closer. "I think she knew all along what we refused to admit." Emma smiled, her heart full. "For once, I'm not scared of where this leads." "Me neither," Alex said, pressing a kiss to her forehead. There, under the soft glow of the city lights, 2 people who had stumbled into each other's lives by pure accident finally embraced the chaos, the love, and the beautiful unpredictability that made it all worth it. Their story hadn't been perfect. It had been real. And for both Emma and Alex, that was so much better than perfect. Sometimes, the best things in life happen when you least expect them. Emma and Alex's journey shows that even a mistake can lead to something extraordinary if you're brave enough to embrace uncertainty. True connections aren't always neat or planned, they're often messy, surprising, and deeply real. In a world that pressures us to have everything perfectly mapped out, Emma and Alex's story reminds us that letting go of rigid plans can open doors to unexpected happiness. Next time life steers you off course, stay open. That wrong turn might just lead you to the right people, the right opportunities, and even a better version of yourself. Trust that not everything worth having will fit neatly into your timeline, and that's exactly what makes it beautiful.